these two. Yeah.
These two?
Down, yeah.
Sorry, guys. This is our first OPUS Inside since the pandemic, basically. And we're so incredibly excited to be back here. I'm Rich Van Voorst. I'm the Worship Arts Director here at Tampa Covenant. And Tampa Covenant is the host for OPUS Tampa. And OPUS is an organization that seeks to just bring art up into this Carrollwood neighborhood and to connect with other businesses and organizations that want to
Perfect.
promote arts in the
I don't know what we're looking for.
So we are excited to be a part of this community. We're excited that we can host these events here and bring in artists from the community to talk about their art and the process. We have two wonderful artists here tonight with us. We have Bonnie Van Voorst, who is our first artist to speak. And then after that, we have Jessica McCormick. And both of these artists have been in our OPUS main show, which is every May, if there's not a pandemic. And as you can see, our next show has been put on the calendar. We will be having another show in this room. It's amazing. We packed about 35 artists in here, all different kinds of mediums. Heavy hors d'oeuvres, it's a party for the arts. And there are cards by the door to take with you on your way and give to any other artists that you know. It is a jury show, and there are also prizes as well. And the jury, the jury will be announced a little bit later. So, I have the pleasure of introducing our first artist,
It's my bad.
Bonnie Van Voorst. She is my wife. And it's funny because we've been having these for a couple of years, and this is the first time that she's done it. She is also part of the OPUS crew, planning and putting on these events. And she is going to be speaking this evening a bit about a few of her recent series, particularly one that's called Your Brain is Beautiful. So would you put your hands together and help me welcome Bonnie Van Voorst?
Hello. So, how do I know if these are on?
Well, we would hear you.
Can you hear me? Are they on? I heard there's lights on. I know. Sorry, Jessica. Good luck. No, not on?
Yeah, speak loudly for a second.
Cool. I can talk loudly. And then I also have, Rich, some slides. So I will talk for a minute first. So this is some of my work. I have a short PowerPoint just with a few things, some pictures of, oh, now I hear me. Am I on now? Okay. So some pictures of where I paint and some of what I use and some of what, some of the things I draw inspiration from. And then I've got some pictures of the idea that led up to the series that I completed most recently. So these aren't it. These are just some of my pieces. These are my new series, so I will hold them up later. But Rich, if you want to pop up my slides. Go ahead. So I am a very kinesthetic painter. I have a beautiful easel that Rich bought me years ago. It's wonderful. It's expensive and fancy and very large. And I paint usually sitting on the floor on a shower curtain. I have tried painting at an easel, and I just need a little bit more like actual literal grounding. So this is where I usually paint, just right there on the floor. Rich, do you have a clicker or something? Or you want me just to yell at you every time? Thumbs up? Okay. So sometimes I paint on an old tablecloth at our dining table. He's not looking at me. But usually it's my floor shower curtain. You can just go through them. So I spend lots of time sitting on the floor. Just like that. All right, go ahead to the next one. So I am an abstract painter. I have been painting since I was really little. My grandparents were painters. My mom, hi Mom. My mom is a painter as well and did pastel portraits when I was a kid, so I always had materials. And I remember going to my grandparents' house and asking my grandpa for a painting lesson. And he would sit me down and he would say, okay, and here's how you paint a tree. I'm like, I don't want to paint it that way. I want to paint my own tree. And it wouldn't necessarily look like a tree, but I can see that thread and how it went through, where over time and as I got older, what I did got further and further away from looking like something and went more into shapes and colors and using lines and, you know, just different textures and pieces to express something less literal and something more abstract or more universal. So go ahead. Oh, hi, Dolores. So, oh, the colors being weird. So a lot of times I will take pictures of things out in nature that have interesting colors and textures or compositions, or I will take weird pieces of wood or rock or things and use those as inspirations. There's like agar plates and a piece of a wall with some bugs on it and some fungusy wood and a mushroom. Go ahead. Yes. Or these are some old photos that were in like a National Geographic article, and then a couple of pictures that my daughter took out the window of our plane when the sun was setting. So I'll go back and look through those things, and I keep tabs on them for inspiration for what I'm going to do, or colors that are interesting together, or ideas for things. Go ahead. So again, weird ice, weird fungus, weird stingray tooth. Okay, go ahead. I stuck in some process shots because that's something that is not what you usually get to see. So these are pretty self-explanatory. When I'm at the beginning of something, I'll usually start with maybe just a shape or just a color, sometimes with an idea, but sometimes not. And then, so on the right is the finished piece. And I put a couple of little short videos in here so you can see like a time lapse of how I start on something. So go ahead and go forward. Yeah, so this is a video, if it plays. There's no sound. I know, that's what I was thinking too, the carnival music. So the thing that I noticed the most is, first of all, it's really intimidating to videotape yourself painting because I kept feeling like it had to be, like this had to be it had to be right. But a lot of times when I'm painting, what I do is I will do a first layer and I will look at it and be like, okay, that's going somewhere, and then I'll do a next layer and I'm like, oh, it's dead, I ruined it. And then I have to spend a while looking at it and just kind of resting in that piece and waiting to see what is that next layer, like what is the next thing that it needs to have, or is it actually done? And sometimes I'll spend, that's not mine, sometimes I'll spend a long time looking at a piece and waiting to see if it's actually just done, if I was thinking it still needs something and it's not, it's really just done. Go ahead. Okay, this is that same piece. So I ended up on this one just wiping off a lot of it and starting over. And it actually is still sitting partially finished because it got weird and I didn't like it. But that is just part of it too. Okay, Rich, can you skip ahead to the next section, I think. Okay, so this is the part that is leading up to the series that I did most recently. So one thing that I have only lately realized is I have been using painting as a tool to process things for a very long time. And whenever something is especially challenging, I didn't realize I was doing it, but I would use painting as a way to process it. So when I was in college, I had a big painting project, like one of the big open-ended, it just has to be involved, come up with some idea that's like big and takes a lot of time. And around that time, my grandpa was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And I was fascinated by how those sick cells looked. Like those diseased cells were actually also really interesting. So I did a series of these little paintings of the tumor cells. And that was just that was my project, and when I was done, I put it in a drawer and didn't really think about it again. Rich, can you go to the next one? So these were my little, they're like this big, my little bitty paintings based on those cells. And I thought at the time, I was, I don't know, 19, 20. I thought that, the lines of them were interesting and the shapes were interesting and the colors and just, I wasn't thinking too hard about it. But then over the years, the next time that I encountered something where it was like a big, scary thing that involved some sort of slides under a microscope. Rich, can you go to the next one? Or Debbie, whoever's back there. One more. So in, I don't know what year it was, 5 years ago, Rich, and he gave me permission to share his business, he got super sick and ended up being diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease called dermatomyositis. And the way that they diagnose that is they do a muscle biopsy. And I had never heard of a muscle biopsy. I did not realize it's they take a 2-inch chunk of your thigh muscle out. And they put it under a microscope and they look for, a specific pattern of damage. And as we were looking, I was, doing lots of research and looking at all of the pictures and all of the cells, and this is what a normal muscle looks like, and this is what we're thinking it might look like, or it might look like all of these other things. And I spent a lot of time looking at these microscopic images of diseased and damaged muscles. And they are, it was not a fun experience certainly not for Rich or for any of our family, but there was something really, really visually beautiful about the way these looked. They add dye to them to make things show up, so they look really cool. They look like kind of little highways and little networks. So I did a couple of paintings based on those, and I can see now looking back how they were getting further away. So you can go to the next one. They're getting further away from looking like, a drawing of an actual microscope slide image, and more the idea of how that would, how it feels. So I did 2 paintings based on that, and that was something that was really helpful for me because I was able to take something that was just purely ugly. It was not fun. It was very hard, but at least do something with it that was useful and was beautiful. So the series that I did most recently of paintings came about during the pandemic. So we're a year in, and Rich had said, I want you to get back into painting. So the whole year leading up to that, when everyone was like, oh, I've got nothing but time. I'm going to be super creative. I'm going to do all the things. I was like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to see a paintbrush. I don't want to do anything creative at all. I didn't want to touch it. So January 2021, our kids finally went back to school, and Rich said, I want to give you a day a week. I will take over the whole day. I'll do drop-off, pickup, all of that. And then you can go and lock yourself away in your studio, and you can just work. And I set myself one tiny goal. I'm terrible at setting goals. For me, if I set a goal, then I might not do it. So if I don't set a goal, I can't not achieve it because there is no goal. So I set a tiny, tiny goal of just going into my studio and doing the work, just painting something, not any specific thing, not any idea, not any purpose, just going and painting something. And I spent probably 6 weeks or longer going in once a week and painting stuff, just blobs or just pieces of color, just lines. And a lot of them went into the paint over this or the trash pile because they were just not anything worth keeping. And then I hit one really, really rough day where I just hit the wall. I was like, I am exhausted, I am overwhelmed, I am frustrated, and my brain is just not working how I want it to. It's not doing what I need it to do, and I just want a normal brain that works how it's supposed to. And in that just frustration and sorrow and anger with how my brain was working, I had the phrase come into my head, and it sounds so woo-woo. But it did, because I did not just invent it, but the thought came into my head, your brain is beautiful. And it's the same idea as these paintings and of the ones that I did before of those tumor cells, that those aren't things that are easy or fun, that we like, that are actually good things. They're hard things, but we can see in them something that is still beautiful. Like I can do something with that feeling and that emotion that is beautiful, and then that someone else can look at and maybe connect with too. So if you go, I think the next, so this is 5 of them. So I've got them all up here, and when I'm done talking, and I'll answer any questions that everybody has, but I've got them all up here, and you are welcome to come look at them and pick them up and see all of them. But what I wanted to do with this is do a series of paintings that are all very different from each other, because maybe one person really connects with one of them and someone else really connects with another one. And I wanted it to be something where they had that unity, where they all relate to each other, but everyone is different. And some of them are darker and some are brighter, because sometimes my brain just feels like a million scattered things all over the world, and sometimes it just feels like dark, and sometimes it feels like cheerful chaos. So there's a different piece for each of those feelings. Go to the next one. So there's 3 more. They're a little hard to see up there, but I have a bunch of them up here. And probably the last thing I'll say about that series is my goal with it, because I did them for other people and not for myself, to keep for myself, is I wanted them to be like little cards that would be something that wouldn't be too precious to just have and keep and give to someone else who is struggling, or give to someone else who was feeling like, I have a broken brain and it's awful and I hate it. And you can say, your brain is beautiful. So I did that for myself and for my family and for my friends and for anyone who has that feeling of like, my brain is just not working. It just doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Because I think that's something that is universal. Like we all sometimes feel like our brain is just not doing what it's supposed to, sometimes because its chemicals are off. And sometimes because it was a really terrible day. There's so many reasons, but that was my goal with it, was to have just little prints that are accessible. So, not something where like, no, these just go in a gallery, nobody touches them, nobody gets to like have it and hold it for themselves. So that is the end of that series. So I have no watch on, and I don't know how long I've been talking. So I think now is probably a good time. Is now a good time for me to open it up for questions? Okay. Ask me questions. Brian.
I'm very intrigued, and so Bonnie and I are friends. I think.
It's true.
Sorry. But I'm very intrigued because I am about as opposite on the creative genius spectrum. I am a very cold, calculating engineer type, and I was intrigued by when you said that sometimes you're doing it and you're like, no, it's dead, I hate it. What just happened there? And the question I have is, in that part of the process, I mean, I know it's not, I have a plan, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, but do you ever take a step back and something is Freudian subconscious or views or whatever you call it, you're just like, what just came out? Or is it all, I kind of know where I'm going with this and I'm crafting all the parts that come out?
The first one, almost all the time. My typical process is much more on the like, I'm not sure what's happening, but I'm just gonna go with it side. So I just had the huge privilege of speaking at Urban Cottage that Marisa Hess runs a couple of days ago, and I was talking with the kids about, one of them asked how long it takes me to paint something. It's like, well, it takes me a little bit of time to paint it, and it takes me a lot of time to sit with it and see what it's trying to be, which sounds, I know it sounds bonkers. It sounds weird to me. But the way that I paint a lot of times is just sort of seeing where things go. And it's not all, like I'm not completely crazy. I do, know how colors work together and how they go on the paper and what it's gonna do if I move it in a certain way. So some of it I control, but a lot of it on purpose, I just wanna see what it's gonna be and then go where it's going. Yes.
Speak a little bit about these pieces over here and what were they within an idea or framework of grouping or your thought processes?
Let me think. Some of them are, this one I did a series of paintings that were inspired by like corals and plants and things. This is from that. A lot of them, let's see. I don't know, a lot of this one, I was working on recreating a piece that I did when Rich and I went and led some workshops in Cuba a couple of years ago. And I did a piece based on, and it's going out of my brain. The idea of casting all your cares on him. And I did a piece that was focused on like what all that, the worry and the anxiety feels like. I really love the language of color. I think that it's something that is much more universal than, it's something more universal than a lot of things in art and more accessible. Like, I think most people would agree that these colors are kind of like uncomfortable, like those yellow, greens, and black together, or, we can pretty much across the board agree, like the sky is blue and grass is usually green and blood is usually red. So I love working within some of those typical colors so that people who are totally unfamiliar with art if they don't have that art language, that they can still read a piece and connect with it. Yeah. Kyle. I usually ask my mom. I'm not kidding, I really do. I send it to my mom and she'll say, because sometimes I'll say, I don't know what it needs. She'll say, I think it might just be done. Usually, I also will spend a lot of time with something that I think is almost done, waiting to see, like, do I just feel like it's not done because I want to keep going on it, or am I not ready to let it go, but it's just like there's nothing else I can add. So yeah, usually it's just realizing there's nothing else that could be added without taking away. So, Dad. Massive.
So, I love, as you know, epic landscapes, okay? And Hudson River.
Yep.
Kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I'm faced with an abstract, I have two ways I can look at it, and they're both extremes. One is I inevitably see something in there that probably wasn't meant to be in there.
Like a face.
Like in that bottom one there, I immediately saw one of those guys with the big hat, the Wizard of Oz.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But, and the other is to just switch off and say, okay, it's an abstract. Do I like it or not? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. And then, so I'll talk to Linda about it, and she'll start speaking of composition, but it gets really weird for me. So, is there a middle ground for a person who appreciates realism
Mm-hmm.
and but doesn't want to do a disservice to the abstract artist who, truly an artist, and just by saying, "Oh, I like the color, I don't like the color," that. What,
Yeah.
what can I look for that would be helpful from your standpoint?
I will first say that I think it's completely fair to just connect better with a certain type of art. I connect really strongly with abstract art and always have. So I think it's totally fine if you do not prefer abstract art. What I would say in learning how to look at it better is sometimes asking the question, if you don't like it, ask, is that on purpose? Like, were you supposed to like it, or was it supposed to make you uncomfortable? Because sometimes with abstract art, when you don't like it, it was supposed to be that way. Like, it is supposed to make you feel icky, and spend some time sitting in that. Yeah, and I think, knowing about what makes a good composition and stuff is helpful. But I do tend to gravitate more towards either this is beautiful and I want to spend a long time looking at it, or I actually really like looking at things that make me uncomfortable because I want to pick apart why and if that was on purpose. So that's when the little, in galleries or in museums, the little label, when you can look and see, like, is the title helpful? Is there extra information? Like, was it painted during a war? Was it painted, like, what is it that gives context to what it is? So, yeah.
My question actually kind of piggybacks on what you just said, and the paintings that you painted through those rough moments in your life, when you knew that they were finished, and you had, as an artist, completed a piece, did your body as an individual like the art that you had put out? Since it represented such a...
I did, and I think part of it was, like, I wanted to like them. Like, I wanted them to be something that was beautiful and appealing. Like, I didn't want to paint something ugly out of it. I wanted to paint something that I wanted to look at, which is a weird juxtaposition of feelings, but yeah. Yes?
So, I know you work intuitively, if I'm understanding.
Yes.
But those intrusive thoughts have to come from somewhere. So what are, and I see that you're also influenced by science and health, but do you self-consciously
Yeah. Well, let me try and break it apart in my head. So, philosophical, Dolores, help? Influences? Thank you. Those influences, I have read a lot of like what Jeremy Begbie's written. I've read a lot of Makoto Fujimura's writings about art. And then also looking at other artists' work. Like I really love Makoto Fujimura's paintings again. I love Klimt and Van Gogh. So those are some of those big influences. A lot of times, like I did a whole big series that's downstairs on the church calendar. So that was informed specifically by the big hits, the greatest hits of the church year. So like, you know, Epiphany and Easter and in those specific times. So did I answer your question? Kind of, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Bon. Naming the pieces. Do you start with an idea in your head for a name, or is it when the piece is complete, then you're like, that's what it's going to be named?
Naming is super hard. I text my mom. We text each other about our work a lot. Sometimes, like with the pieces downstairs for the church calendar, since they had such a strong, like, it is about this, naming it was a lot easier. Sometimes I just title them what the colors in it are because they don't really, like, it doesn't have anything else. It's just colors. And then sometimes I'll look at it and say, that's what this is. This is about this thing. So it's, for me, the whole range of either I can't think of anything, so it's just untitled in the list of colors. Sometimes it's very specific, and sometimes the title comes later. So.
Do you find that, or do you have a tension by saying, if I name it, then I'm going to try how others think about it, or if I just keep the name off or be bland with the name, then I can leave that up more to another person's interpretation. Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, and I don't know if I could start with a title. Like I just, that feels really, I don't know what title I would start with. I sometimes even have trouble starting with an idea and more like start with paint and then work on the idea as I'm moving through it. But yeah, I think you're right that if I started with this is the title, this is what it is. But sometimes those parameters are helpful. Like saying this, you know, when I did the pieces about the specific cells, like I knew what it was, and that didn't change my process going through it. So, yeah. Alana. Oh. I will show you. Alana asked about my supplies, so you guys are welcome as soon as you're out of questions, or whenever Rich flags me down. I brought some of the stuff that I use. I use, you know, your standard run of paints and paintbrushes, except I actually really like I like to let my brushes get kind of crunchy and gross, because I like the textures. So I didn't bring my ones that are still in good shape, so you can actually touch these. I don't mind. And then I also have in here, Alana, I have a toothbrush that I use sometimes, and a medicine dropper, and a palette knife. You can use it to put paint on, you can use it to scrape paint off, and then some different types of acrylic paint. I probably should have said, I paint with acrylics. I started painting with acrylics because they dry really fast, and I had babies, and I needed something that I could do that would be dry really quickly. And then I got so familiar with it that I knew what it would do. Like I knew if I did this, it would behave in this way. and then I could mess around with it and see, well, what if I wanted it to do something else? What if I added something weird to it or put it on a weird texture? So yeah, Alana, you can come up and look at those later too. Those are a lot of my supplies. Yes.
So I think it's interesting. I haven't written songs for a while, but it's interesting to me how similar the process sounds. Like lots of songs where I'll start with a line or two and not really know where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
But with a song, you can kind of carry it around in your head, right? So when I was going to be writing songs, if I was working on one, it was often just kind of running in the back of my mind, and that's how it would sort of, the line would finish itself. So for me, it felt like the song would be running kind of in the background.
Yeah.
Is that very similar to yours? There's lots of songs, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does that work with the painting, though, right? Do you feel like it is this, that you kind of carry it with you during the day, or do you have to be sitting with it physically for that to happen?
Sometimes I do just sit with them physically. I usually, when I'm like resting on a piece and waiting on it and seeing, where to take it next or what is the next stage in it, I take a picture and I'll just walk around and like look at it every now and then. And sometimes I'll draw on the picture. I also got that from my mom. So just like, what if I did this to it, which is a little less intimidating than like, putting a big swatch on it. But yeah, I'll usually just like actually carry it around with me and spend a lot of time looking at it. Mm-hmm. Casey.
So I think my favorite part about the presentation was when you were talking about when your grandfather got sick and doing the art helped you deal with that. And maybe as you kind of realize that art did that for you. Could you just expound on that and maybe it's another experience where just doing the art helped you cope or realize something or just be patient or
Yeah.
I know it's kind of a personal question.
No, I don't mind. I don't mind personal questions. Yeah, I don't think I realized it at that time. I think at that time, as I maybe realized it as much as you realize anything when you're still like in college. And I think I was being kind of intentional to do it as a coping mechanism. But when Rich was sick, it was much more intentional. Like I wanted to do something with it. Like I needed something that was like a physical representation of something that was so hard. So it was, yeah, it felt like a way for me to just put outside of myself some of that grief and some of that pain and like take it out of just me having it internally and then put it outside where other people could see it and maybe someone else could see it and say, well, that's a cool painting, tell me about it. And then I could choose to say like, thank you, I like it too. Or to say, thank you, here is what it came out of. And I like that opportunity to share as much as I am comfortable sharing. But I think a lot of times people we don't have a lot of spaces where you can't just walk up to someone and be like, hi, our life is really hard right now because my husband is super sick and we're worried he's gonna die. That's not a great conversation starter, but if I have a painting, then someone can say, that's a cool painting, what is it? And then, if I'm feeling up to it or within whatever, borders I set up on that, I can share I can share that, which I have seen over and over and over. You really never know how much that will connect with another person. And it is the most common experience that I've had with that, where someone else, because of that, that point of connection or because of that vulnerability, they have something where they can relate to that. So I feel like I am kind of a chronic oversharer of things that are very personal within my boundaries because I think that it is helpful in relating with other people. So, are you kicking me off? Do you have the hook? Yes.
You said that you were always an abstract artist. Have you evolved? Were you more structured when you start out, and you get looser and looser? Have you ever thought about going back to a more structured, or do you just continue to get more loose and when you get to where you just drop a dot on
Yeah.
go back and kind of gain the structure or creativity that maybe led you that where you are?
Yeah, that's a good question. I still like kind of keep flexing that muscle. So I still do like a lot of sketching or like small paintings that are, I might sit and paint a landscape that I'm observing or something. So I try and keep using that muscle because I didn't start painting abstractly in a void. There were a lot of, like, I learned all of the color theory and all of the, I went to art school, so I did all of the, everything underneath that. So I think it's really important for what I do abstractly to keep those muscles strong. But yeah, sometimes I have pulled further back into bringing in things that are more like, oh yeah, I know what that is. That actually looks like a thing. And I think that that's a fun thing for me to do sometimes. I don't know that I will ever be at the dot on a page stage, because I just think that's not my bent. But yeah, I like to do both and make sure that I'm not just painting abstractly at the expense of remembering all of the other stuff. I did a very big Goliath.
Let's go ahead and thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to take a short 10 to 15 minute break. We're going to actually kind of reset things for our next artist, Jessica. So we encourage you at this point to get up and mingle. We're going to turn on the lights and everything like that. Grab a cup of coffee and a cup of water and just kind of enjoy the space. Bonnie will also be available to ask and answer any more questions at this point. But like I said, 10 to 15 minutes and we'll be right back. Thanks so much, y'all.
Yep. Can you
Go see Ingrid on that.
She doesn't know how to turn one of them off.
You did great.
Buddy.
Mama.
Hey, sweetheart.
Hi.
Hi.
I want to do a canvas painting.
like you know what you're doing.
Gotta get up there. All right.
Pardon me.
I think I'll do one on each side.
Let's take five.
Got one on each side now.
Fancy pants.
Should be good.
Okay.
Should be good to go.
Dope.
All set.
Thanks.
All right. Now, do you need any help? Are you good?
We're working on it, yeah.
Glasses. You need these alligator clips or no?
No, I do not.
This is fun stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Will you fit? Maybe. Debatable. I don't want to force.
Wait,
I don't want to
just
force
go
it.
yeah.
There is gold leaf. Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't want to
We'll
force
just
it.
put it here.
Perfect.
Leave it for her. Can you get your stuff out? No. Yes. Hand me something. And I can take them like that? Okay.
Ta-da! Wheels.
Tell me what you think of this. Do you want this? If this is center, where would you want that? You want it smack dab in the center?
Let me think. I don't think smack dab in the center would quite work. Well, maybe.
I mean, you could have your table here and then this over there.
Yeah, I think if they're
it's
just
kind of doing
quite next to each other more than anything else.
Come this way about 4 feet. Tell us when.
Looks great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's good. Tilt on this.
Sure. Sweet. Fancy pants. Ah.
You set up with any like home run questions or anything?
That requires thought on my part, and I am just winging it tonight. Nice and touch. Okie dokie. Here's some stuff. Oh, love you. Yeah, dope. Well, you're just being a stinker. better, thank you.
We got like hands on. That's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna give you a little bit more space to walk through. Is that cool?
Sure.
I want you to kick me. You good with that stool there? You need anywhere else?
Yeah, I'm not gonna use the stool, so.
I'll get rid of it.
Okay.
Bottle of water.
Well, that's more to
What's that?
get my
give me the-
paintbrushes wet.
What's that?
To get my paintbrushes wet.
Of course. Of course. I can't believe you're doing this in acrylic. I feel like that takes more time now.
What do you mean?
Because you used to just soak
This?
it up, right?
No.
Oh, I thought for some reason you told me you soaked it up.
It was not quite like that
Oh.
as much as I wanted to. In addition, with the watercolor, yeah, like it would kind of soak it up, not really.
Yeah.
I had to clear coat every single piece, otherwise it would bleed when I was gluing it on, or if people were touching it, like there was always that threat. So I had to clear coat every single freaking piece of paper.
goodness. Oh my goodness.
So
That's
not
so
only was that very time consuming, it was also just so wasteful, like cans and cans of clear coat
Right. Okay.
for just one piece.
So
Bah.
the acrylic's off.
So acrylic all the way. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh, those will never fit in the racks I'm making.
I know, right?
Too thick.
She left. She left.
Okay.
For about 6 months. I was like, you gotta come get this off the wall because I'm not storing it. So, but yeah.
Should not do that. What am I doing? I don't even know. Yeah? It's good stuff. I really like this brand.
This
Thank you.
looks like a weird, like, hammer measuring thingy.
It does kind of look like a hammer, but it's something called a T-square because it looks like a big old T. So if you want to do like a straight line, you just put this right up against the edge, boop, straight line. It's so easy. I learned about it in an old drafting class where I was doing architecture stuff. It's the best. Yeah, I've got some that's even tinier than that, but I don't know. It's hard to work with when it's too tiny. Just don't touch.
Hello. Hello. Come back, come over. Come more. Sit. The coffee is very strong. Passionate. Welcome back, everyone. Did you enjoy your coffee? I used to be tired. I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming. After a couple years of isolation, you know how you're kind of socially awkward, and sometimes it's hard to like get that muscle moving again. This is our first attempt, and so far so good. There's like a lot of people here, so it's been pretty successful. Bonnie was really good. Can't wait to hear what Jessica has to say. Oh, I should mention, my name is also Jessica. Invasion of the Jessicas. But I'm on the OPUS crew too. It's just, these kinds of nights have been really like, just a wonderful accent to our awesome show that we had in May that we're finally having again. Can't wait to see you guys there. Yeah, so I just want to say thank you for coming. Enjoy the next artist. She is a mixed media artist, also acrylic artist. There's so much I don't know, and I'm excited to hear it. So Jessica McCormick.
All right. Ooh, I have a microphone. It's so exciting. I feel like I should be giving a TED Talk. Don't worry, I'm not. It's okay. So yes, my name is Jessica McCormick. I am an artist. It's still very exciting to say that because I've really only been painting since 2017. Actually, OPUS 2018, I did the math tonight, was the first ever show that I was actually in. So I owe a lot to Tampa Covenant Church, the community here, Richard, Bonnie, everyone for taking a chance on me in that jury that year. I learned so much. I'm still learning, and that's sort of what I wanted to share with you tonight. I wanted to share the random, very not fancy tools that I use, the processes that I go through, because unlike Bonnie, I am not an art student. I did not go to school for art. Yes, I took humanities classes. I took art history classes. But I never learned anything when it came to actually how to do this. So being self-taught is an adventure that I shall take you along with me. So first off, my primary love is doing these two-dimensional acrylic pieces. straight lines, right angles. Ooh, yeah, gosh, I love that stuff. This is probably my favorite tool on the planet. The T-square, oh my goodness. I learned about these when I took a high school drafting class, and my life was changed. Because you get, I mean, just look at it. It's so beautiful. Just hang it right there, make your lines. I mean, come on, you need nothing else. Okay, maybe you need a couple more things. So how I get these straight lines, it's not just with a T-square, it's also with tape. This is the best brand of tape I've ever had in my life. Actually, another Opus artist turned me onto this, and I am forever grateful to them. So I want to show you how I use my tape. This is actually also going to be very useful to someone who is maybe painting their walls at home. Who here maybe did some painting and redecorating during lockdown? Okay, so you might be familiar with some of the struggles of painting a wall with, a nice bright color, but you have white baseboards. How do you make it not just all blend together? How do you get that nice crisp line? Well, you get it with tape, but I'm gonna give you an extra fun little tip. So you put the tape down, we'll pretend this is our baseboard right here. Use your imagination. Really smash it down with your fingernail. But then you want to actually match the base color first. So if you have white floorboards, you wanna actually start with white to match that baseboard. And you're gonna just ram it underneath that tape. Really get it in there. Why? Because no matter how good your tape is, and this is excellent tape, there's always gonna be just a little bit of bleed under, especially if you have really textured walls. Tape can only do so much, so you just ram it all in there. And then, my next handy dandy tool that I like to use This is why acrylic paint is so wonderful, because it dries so quickly. All right, so honestly, that's already actually tacky. Yes. So I just go in here with my nice bright color. I'm gonna do this fun little aqua. Just do. Yes, obviously I sing to myself this whole time, as you can tell. I brought the apron, should have put it on, too late now. Because if you are a messy, messy person like me, you need an apron. Somehow, some way, paint gets everywhere on me. All right. A little more hairdryer action. So I'm gonna let that sit for a little bit longer. What I wanna talk about is using other colors that I use. As you can see on those two far pieces, I like to use these bright colors, but I create this gradient where we're shifting from one color to another, maybe to another. Why do I do that? I think I hate myself. That's a thing I need to talk to my therapist about. But really, I just find it so fun to see how colors interplay with each other, and you can really force that if you're just making colors have to blend. But to make sure that I'm getting all these different layers with these gradients and then these other colors, I will do that gradient first. And that's like my base. Get all that done, get all that pretty and perfect, and then I'll put down all this tape. Tape. Aggressive amounts of tape, especially on that far left one. And then I will do a top color, like a black, a blue, a white, whatever I'm feeling is gonna be the background color. And then when I get to peel the tape off, it's like magic, where it just reveals itself to me once more. And it's just so cool that I get to do that. So meanwhile, we can see how our baseboard is looking. Look at that. Oh my gosh. So yeah, next time you're painting your walls, do that little trick. Do the white first with the baseboard. You're gonna thank me. I also like to use, see, this is why I should have worn the apron. I also like to explore with textures. There are some fun mediums that we get to use as acrylic artists. Stuff that's kind of this gel. It comes in these different thicknesses, hardnesses, and stuff like that. You can use them as a glue even. I'll get to that later. But sometimes I'll slap it on a canvas and then I'll run through with a brush or one of these like specialty kind of rubber comey things. It's really fun to touch. Just drag it through, create something so new. And I like to play with textures and colors because just even though I'm using straight lines, it doesn't mean that it has to be flat, you know? So that's why I add a little bonus there. All right, so that's my first demonstration. Second demonstration is about these. Everybody loves these. They really do. They look different. They're very dimensional. I get it. I have a complex relationship with these types of pieces because they take so long. It's very different of a process for me, but I've learned how to adapt it, change it, so that I actually really enjoy it. So first off, I use watercolor paper. I started doing this with watercolors. I realized that was a mistake. So now I use acrylics as well. And I genuinely just tear it up. Ta-da. Paint a little color on there. We're gonna pretend that there's actually color on this brush. Just paint it on there, paint it on there. And then when I'm done, I'll use a canvas as a backing, just because it's easy to hang later, make my life easier. In case you didn't realize, I am occasionally lazy. So then I will take this fun gel that I was using for texturing that can also be used as glue. Use the palette knife. Remember when Bonnie brought that up? Maybe not that much, that's aggressive. Fold a little bit over here. You guys are really seeing the magic right now. I never show this to anybody. Put a little of the glue on there. Just hold it down. Keep going. And you've created paper art. So the fun part that I've realized with this 3D work that I create, even though it looks very different from the two-dimensional pieces, it still ends up being kind of the same creative process for me. Art, for me, is a therapy. The world can be really topsy-turvy. It can make you feel twisted and upside down. We've all especially felt that in the past couple years, haven't we? For me, if I can take my tape, take my paper, take my paints, I know that there's one thing right now in my life that I can at least control, and it's what I'm creating. And for me, that is one of the most therapeutic things that I could ever do for myself. The world is feeling like it's falling apart, at least I can paint. So with my 2D work, yeah, there's a lot of measuring. There's that magical T-square. So I get to plan it out. These are a little different. They're a little more freeform, a little more organic, but it's still a meditative process for me. I can sit there and tear paper for hours. It's honestly really fun, and I recommend it to everyone. But then I will paint each individual piece of paper. That's its own kind of centering process for me. And then I get to apply a piece of paper meticulously, carefully, with planning to a canvas. And in the end, it creates that same sense of beautiful control for me. And that's what I live for when I create. It's the only way I can describe it, is just beautiful control. So, I didn't have much else to share with you verbally, but I did bring one of these that you guys can touch. Because I know everyone wants to pet these. Feel free to pass it around. Yeah. Get up in there. Okay, so that was my very basic demonstration for you on my random little process. Please fire away with questions, because I'm sure you have a couple. All right, I saw you first.
I love painting demonstration for the wall, where you did the color underneath, tape. Have you ever done that on a wall in your house?
Yeah.
Create the wall as a piece of art.
Yes. The first apartment that I ever lived in with my now husband, I say now, we've been married 10 years. Back in the day when we were young, strapping youths, we had this wall above a fireplace where we'd wanted to hang the TV. In hindsight, I've heard that you're not supposed to hang TVs above your fireplace. Oops. But we had to hide the cables somehow, some way. So I bundled them up, taped them up, and then taped over it with a very Mondrian-inspired mural with the black lines and everything, and you could not see those cables. And that's when I started learning about, okay, so what tape can I use that's better? Oh, let me try this frog tape. Ooh, that's better, but it's not the best. And then I remembered when I used to do house painting for my first job, I used to do drywall repair. I don't know, I'm weird. That we used to do these little tricks about trying to fill in stuff here and there, and I realized I could fill in with base paint. And it's exploded everything from there. So I've since done indoor murals for a couple of friends as well, some friends here in Carrollwood, one in St. Pete, and to be able to do that just quick little undercoat first, it actually saves me so much time. So remember that, yeah. I saw a hand, yes. Sure, my color choices. Are you looking more why or what?
Where it comes from.
Okay, well, it comes from the paint store. But in my mind where it comes from, usually I have some sort of inspiration, thought, feeling first. I will sketch out something either on paper, or lately I will do a digital sketch in Photoshop or something like that, where I can really push the colors and see what I could explore, what could blend, so on and so forth. For these two pieces on the far left, I had been starting to explore the aesthetics of the cyberpunk genre, you know, Blade Runner, movies like that. And there's very much the idea of that interplay between neon, bright, vibrancy, as well as dark grittiness. And I thought, yes, I clearly need to do something with that. So that was the first time I'd ever purchased neon-colored paints and really started to push myself with how much I could create a vibrancy in my work. Because other times I'd been using kind of more muted or natural colors, and I was really thrilled with what I'd ended up kind of discovering. Does that answer? Okay. And then when it comes to these, I'm usually much more inspired by the colors that I see in nature, sunsets, fire, water, air, things like that. So, all right, yes.
Jessica, what was the inspiration for those pieces?
These ones? Well, I mean, this one and this one were honestly inspired by the four elements, the Aristotelian elements of earth, air, fire, and water. I didn't bring water and earth today, but the idea was that it's very much an exploration of basic structures of life when it comes to those four elements. And I wanted to see how I could maybe try to encapsulate them in my own way, and in my way, that's color. Fire, that's easy. Oranges, reds. Air's the tricky one, because you don't really see it unless you're living in a very smoggy place, and I didn't want to think about smog. So instead I was thinking about, how would we draw clouds? How would they be animated in like a Disney movie or a Studio Ghibli movie? That's where I got my colors for air. So, yeah. This one in the middle, this blue to white, I was specifically inspired by the Tampa Bay Lightning. Every year, pre-pandemic, they would have this celebration of the arts where it was another juried show. Artists could apply with different pieces, and then you would have your art, if you were accepted, hanging at Amelie Arena. And I was thinking, ooh, I want to try something. And the lightning. I mean, look at this blue. It's a beautiful blue on a lightning shirt that you have there, and I wanted to copy that. And then as I was playing with this, and I was diluting the color more and more as I was getting to white, as I was realizing it kind of looked like water, and then it kind of looked like ice, which felt so perfect. All right, I thought I saw another hand. Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do you think you forgot your anything, or you just didn't want to put it on?
Your apron, did you forget your apron?
Oh, I brought it. It's right here. I can put it on. My brother gave it to me. It's really cool. It's got all these nice pockets. But yeah, I got really distracted by the task at hand and being in front of way more people than I expected to be here. So I ended up not wearing it. But thanks for asking about it. I like it. Yes?
So you started making art in 2017? Is that what you said?
Loosely, yes. I officially made my first painting in the year 2007. It was when I had just moved into my first apartment alone. And it was a very freeing and very terrifying time in my life. And I realized that I needed something above my bed. And I painted this big 30 by 40 piece, and I thought, ooh, I could play with this more. And I did for a little bit, but then I let it fall away. I was interested more in photography for a number of years there and really tried to get into that. But somehow painting came back into my life. And so 2017 was when I thought, you know what? Let's play with this some more.
Did anything happen to bring you that realization?
That's a really great question. I can't think of any specific catalyst moment for me. I think I was maybe a little frustrated at my learning curve when it came to photography. I had some old paint sitting around, and I just said, you know what? Let's do this. Yeah. Thanks. Richard?
So it sounds like your process, like the inception of the pieces, really starts in your head beforehand. And even if you're sketching this out and playing with the colors, you're really kind of composing it in a different spot and then moving it to the canvas. Am I getting that? I don't know if I'm off there, but like, talk about the whole process, if you can,
Yeah.
of this, like one of these 2D pieces from beginning to end, and you know, with the subject matter, like for instance, the Blade Runner piece.
So, yeah, you're very right. I have an image in my head, and I need to get it out somehow, some way. Sometimes it's because I saw a very inspiring piece of architecture. I love architecture, like I said. Architecture. Or even just another piece of art I saw in a book that I got from the library, and I said, ooh, I want to try that. Usually I'll have a concept in my head, and then I'll start sketching it out and think, how can I translate what's murkily in my brain? It's never 100% clear when it's in my brain. I don't know why. It's very rude. So I'll start sketching, I'll start drawing in Photoshop or something like that, and then I'll think, okay, that needs, no, that. And there's a lot of adjustment, a lot of remeasuring, a lot of erasing. But I'll also almost always start with a concept of color, that I need to start with a color first, or a combination of colors. So for this one on the far left, I knew that I needed to have these bright neon colors. What was the most aggressively neon I could think of? Pink and yellow. And then I added the black, and it felt incomplete. So I redid it, adding the blue, and I realized, there it was. So it's such a trial and error process for me. I'll think I'm done, and then I realize, no, it's terrible, and I need to start all over again. when it comes to this middle piece right here with the gray and the black and the gold, that was very specifically inspired by some older artists from, I'm going to get art history nerdy on you here, the Brazilian constructivist group Grupo Frente, who were taught by Ivan Serpa. And their whole thing was very much this basic geometry, very simplistic lines, whether it was squares, triangles, and just how they could tease out the most base shapes, but to have them still be balanced and beautiful. And I wanted to try that too. But then I wanted to add a little contemporary spin. So add some texture, add some gradient, stuff like that, to again get the idea that it doesn't have to be flat. Does that answer your question, kind of?
Would you ever get to canvas and you have to, oh man, I have to go back off the canvas and redo and start in the canvas? You ever got to that point?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay.
It sucks. I don't really do it so much with the 3D pieces just because they take so long. Where if I feel that I'm going in a wrong direction, I can very quickly just like pull a couple pieces off and go. If it's a two-dimensional piece and I'm partway through and I realize it's not working, ooh, it's not a good night for me. But if I haven't messed it up too much, I might save that canvas and repaint over it with something else that I like better. And usually that works. Not always. Yes?
So on your left pieces, so originally I was going to ask, are you influenced by pop culture, specifically the 80s, like you already are?
Oh yeah, synthwave, cyberpunk,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, so like, could you name, and you also mentioned Studio Ghibli, so like what are pieces of media? Well, it's a two-part question. Number one, what are pieces of media that you're thinking of? Because you mentioned Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
And New Wave, I'm a New Wave fan myself. And second, because cyberpunk is this critique of this society in which we live in. So do you have with those far left pieces, is there this underlying critique of this society in which we live in going on, or is it a purely meditative piece inspired by?
You're a thinker. I like it. So the farthest left piece, that was my first foray into trying this cyberpunk synth-inspired vibe. It was just something that I couldn't quite get out of my head, and I had to put it onto canvas. While I'm creating pieces like this, I will definitely be listening to synth music just to get me into that vibe. Like there are specific playlists on YouTube that I will just queue up by Prime Thanatos and Odyssey and mixers like that. When it comes to the one in the middle with these kind of teeth, that was one that I specifically created toward the beginning of lockdown, when I was getting even more into cyberpunk, because I realized, oh my gosh, our world is falling apart. And I had this feeling that everything was starting to just come out of focus and unaligned from each other, whether it's our lives, our politics, our families, things were just shifting away. And I was already starting to see that my friends and my family would be very deeply impacted by the COVID pandemic, whether it was actual illness, losing jobs, everything. And I was afraid that everyone would fall into these little cracks. So this is probably my most political piece, because I was feeling very frustrated at the world, at just absolutely everything. I was still listening to that music, but I was very frustrated while listening to it and creating this piece. So it's a fine interplay for me, whether I just want to chase the aesthetic for fun or if I'm doing it to say something. And in both of these, one is of each instance. Any other questions? Yes? How did I start liking acrylics? I think, you know, when I made that first painting of mine in that first apartment, acrylics were what were at the paint store. And I had used them a little bit with my mom. We used to do arts and crafts together. We always had big projects that we liked to do together. So I was somewhat familiar with how acrylics worked, how they dried, like with a hairdryer. And I've since really started liking them because they're easy to dry, but there's still a lot in there that you can play with. You can add these glues, you can add extra fun liquid and kind of make it a little blurrier and make it last longer. There's still a lot of chemistry there in these fun paints that I really like. But for me, the most important part of why I really like acrylics, to get back to your root question, is the drying factor helps with making these crisp lines. I don't think I'd probably get that with something like oil paint, and I know I would not get that with watercolor. So because I love these lines so much, I have to use acrylic. It's just the best for me. Thanks. Anything else? All right. Thank you all so much. This has been a blast.
Well, again, special thanks to both of our artists for being here tonight. A lot more about Jessica. She was actually just received a recent grant as an emerging artist in the Gasparilla Arts Festival, which is next weekend, right?
Yes.
So you can see her work again at, where is it?
Gasparilla Festival of the Arts is at Julian B. Lane Waterfront Park next weekend.
So come on out there if you have a chance. Hang out and see more of her work. So, again, we are so excited to be back with a lot of these things. There are cards by the door that we would love for you to take that advertise our upcoming OPUS show, which is on May 6th. Also, if you're visiting tonight for the first time, and none of us in the OPUS crew have met you, we'd love to meet you. We've been artists, we just like to meet artists, and we want to know who's in the neighborhood. We will have more upcoming OPUS Inside events, as well as an OPUS Outside photography event coming up in April. That will be hosted by a few photographers in our crew, and we'll actually be going out and shooting photography together. And you can bring your phone, or a Canon Mark II if you have one. We would just love for you to join us for those and hang out and make art and just get to know people and bring and support the arts in this neighborhood. So a special thanks, of course, to Cape Covenant Church for being our wonderful hosts, and we are so glad that you're here, and we'll see you very soon. Have a great night. Drive safe. Thanks for coming.
Great.
Jessica, I'm sure you don't need people telling you what they see, but when I first saw your art, I actually saw yin and yang.
Ooh.
Because it's like,
On that middle one there?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can definitely see why you say that.
So I thought that was interesting that you actually got it from Brazilian culture, because I got like a very...
Specifically from like this artist group in Brazil. It's super fun art history.
It's great. Thank you.
You need to grab your mic.
Got it.
Hey, do you listen to Vaporwave?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll
I
listen
figured.
to anything synthy
Yeah.
for sure.
Yo, I have a wife, so we should be friends. I'm not trying to hit on you. I just think.
No,
you're cool.
I understand completely.
Yeah. I think you're very articulate for not having gone to art school.
Thank you. Well, it does help that I was a communications major.
Oh.
So I did go to school to learn how to occasionally use words. But yeah, also the art history and the humanities classes I think did help in addition.
Yeah, my